everyone, this is Ryan and Alex here for another coffee talk. It's our coffee talk number two, and we have a few topics today that we're going to talk about, and we hope that you enjoy it. Alex, how are you?
I am good, thanks, Ryan. How are you?
Doing all right. It's nighttime over here in
No.
Vancouver, and I guess it's early morning over in London for you.
Yeah, indeed, it's very early here, but I'm
Yeah,
still wide awake.
your espresso machine's probably still warming up.
I think it'll be waking up soon.
You normally have a shot generally in the morning, or do you normally have it later in the day?
I have it, no, generally speaking, I have it in the morning and throughout the day really.
Oh,
So I
yes.
can, so I can have it at night as well. So it doesn't have to, I don't restrict it to mornings. I could have it whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, do you normally have two, three a day, or do you usually just try to hold it back in one?
I actually tried to hold it, so I tried to restrict it to maximum to like maybe to a few, so number wise about three or four.
Three or four? Okay.
And because I
Okay.
don't want to be enslaved by the caffeine of coffee, I I want to drive it by my own passion rather than being enslaved by the addiction of caffeine.
Yeah, you get well, over here we call it, the 3 o'clock shakes. If you don't have enough caffeine by 3 p.m. and you're at work, you start getting the jitters and call it a 3 p.m. shake.
Uh, I like I like the anxiety, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not good, that's for sure, if you're drinking coffee for pure slavery and addiction.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. I just want
No,
to be driven by my own passion, by my own like wanting to have coffee just because I like it.
that's right. That's right. So that kind of leads into our first topic today, in terms of caffeine and some misconceptions about espresso.
Hmm.
So I'll have to confess that when I first started drinking more and more coffee, I thought espresso was a type of drink like a latte or a cappuccino or an americano. Like, I thought espresso was another type of drink, but I later learned that it wasn't, and that kind of opened up a whole world of what espresso actually is, and a lot of the misconceptions that I had before I learned a lot more about espresso. So it was a very interesting and a very big learning experience for me. Um, what did you first think when you thought about espresso back when you're starting out with coffee?
I think when I heard the word espresso, I thought espresso was something that was like that was type like so as you said, I thought it was a type of beverage. Well, I thought it was something really spectacular in coffee, and like it's like I thought and like, because when I was buying beans, like you would see things like espresso roast. So I thought that yeah, so espresso must be a type of roast. It should be really dark. So like all beans must be dark. They must be pitch black. Well, almost black. Um yeah, so I just thought, yeah, so espresso must be something really heavy, like must be something really dark. Like so I thought like espresso would only be made with dark beans. It's only a type of it's only a type of drink rather than focusing more on the brewing method.
Yeah, so I think it really confused me as well because, well, now it doesn't confuse me now that I know, but even now when I'm buying bean at you know the store, or what you see is you see a lot of packaging. The beans are packaged and they say espresso on the top, or espresso blend, or espresso bean. So I think if it's labeled in that manner, a lot of people might think espresso is a type of bean or a type of roast, or it's those beans are for a type of drink like an espresso drink. um, but I found that confusing. Like, I mean, what do you think? Like, have you seen that a lot in, bags of beans when, when you're at the market, or, if you're shopping for coffee beans?
Like I have seen a lot of them, and like especially when I go into the supermarket and then I see like shelves of coffee, which, as you said, like which they are labeled saying espresso roast, high rich. Um, yeah, so I practically see them quite, but I see them everywhere. So like even when I shop for beans online, like you will see like espresso blends, which I think that is actually better compared to when someone says it's an espresso roast. Because I think
Yeah,
when you say an espresso roast, it's actually more misleading when you say this is an espresso blend. Because when you say espresso blend, it is suited for espresso um rather than talking about the roast.
that's right. Yeah. And, it was only later on that I realized, when I started looking to coffee equipment and whatnot, and you start learning more about, the coffee world, that, oh, maybe espresso is a brewing method. It's a way of making coffee, as drip coffee is a way of making coffee, or uh, you know, like you can do like a Turkish espresso, like a stovetop. It's like a way of making coffee.
Mhm.
So, and it was only until when I started looking more into coffee equipment that I realized, oh, this is a semi-automatic espresso machine. Whereas, you look at different coffee makers, it's like, oh, well, this is a, inverted siphon coffee maker. So it's like, oh, that finally clued into me that, oh, maybe espresso is not like a type of coffee drink, or it's not a type of bean, or it's not a type of roast. It's actually a method of making coffee. And I think, you know we're talking about this. It may sound simple, but I think a lot of people, uh, who are starting out in coffee, or enjoying coffee, or drink it on a daily or casual basis, don't you know I think that's a misconception, that espresso is not anything else but, a method of making coffee.
Yeah, I think most people think espresso is just a type. Well, people would just think espresso is it's basically like I think they focus it more on the drink than rather than on the actual process. So as you said, like espresso is a type of brewing process. It is a different way in extracting the flavors from coffee. So I think when people so when you say espresso to people, people would think, oh, so you want a type of a coffee drink, which inadvertently it is a drink, but I think for people like us, we would think more of it as a brewing process rather than like like a really special beverage.
Yeah, and you know, more to that, yeah, a latte is an espresso based drink, so much as a cappuccino is, and ristretto, like, these names, different names for these coffee drinks, are uh, coffee that has been made from the espresso method, the espresso brewing process, the way to extract the coffee out. So I can see how, that kind of ties into, like lattes and cappuccinos, and I can see how, when someone thinks that espresso is a type of coffee drink, it kind of is, but it's not. There are a lot of drinks that are espresso based, but itself it's not, shown as a coffee drink per se, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, so I think you could still say that you would have an espresso by itself, but that is just you having the resulting product of you having made an espresso.
correct.
So rather than when you say I would like a latte, which as you rightly said, it is a milk drink which has espresso as the base.
Correct.
So yeah, so espresso is basically just a brewing method, and the resulting output is it's just it's just an ounce or 2 ounce drink
That's right.
or base. Yeah.
Yeah. And also confess that, when I, started drinking espresso based drinks or espresso itself, I think another misconception is that, oh, it's super strong and it's too bitter. Like the flavor, it's like it's too bitter, because of its strength, because of its uh, small quantity that is known to pack a punch per se of caffeine or strength of the coffee drinks. So uh, for me, like when I first started drinking espresso by itself, like just an ounce or two of espresso, uh, it like I've had bitter stuff, I've had really good stuff now, but it was I've tasted bitter espresso, and I can see where the misconception also comes into play, where people think maybe it's a really bitter type of coffee based drink that people take. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I think when people think espresso is bitter or it's something really strong, I think it gives sort of like a slanted view of what espresso should be. Because I have a because I believe just in general, when coffee made properly, it shouldn't taste bitter. In fact, you should be able to taste the variety of flavors or the taste profile or the flavor notes that comes with coffee. So by saying that if the espresso is made correctly, it should smell aromatic. It should taste wonderful. It should really make you want to have more. You should be able to appreciate the flavors that come with it. So when people say that it's bitter, then that is really then that is really putting a negative view where people would only drink it and they have to brace through the drink rather than just enjoying it.
Yeah, and you
So,
just almost to the point that they're when you say brace through the drink, they're just
so it's
cringing, and
like
you're just like, okay, I gotta get through this.
just go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you said it right there. Like properly made espresso, depending on the bean. Of course, there's so many nuances and different ways you can make espresso. Even though it's one type of brewing method, uh, if made properly, like you said, you should be able to taste the flavor notes and the actual bean of of the coffee. So maybe there's just a lot of poorly made espresso around. I'm not sure, but what are your
Yeah,
thoughts about that?
I think it just comes down to like the general view of I think it just comes down to the general view. So I think when you go into cafes, you could see if the people know what they are doing. That's one of them. So that's the barista. The
Right.
machine, if the machine that they're using, if it's properly cleaned, if it's properly maintained, or the grinder, and crucially the bean. Well, I think the grinder and the bean. So I think there are like all these factors, and if any one of them, especially the grinder or the bean, if one of these two if one of these two aren't up to scratch, then I think for guaranteed you would get bad espresso. So I think so from my experience, I have tasted espressos which were poorly made because it tasted like I don't know, like dust water or just like water flavored like I don't know, bad coffee.
We won't name any cafes or anything here, but
Oh no no no.
yeah, I've
Well,
I've I've also had where it it's like it the flavor is uh, like when people describe espresso properly made and oh, I taste the citrus, I taste the chocolate, I taste the blueberry, raspberry, mango, whatever the flavor notes, the honey, whatever it is. When I had that, well, now that I know, that was not properly made espresso, or it's just the cafe maybe didn't, you know, pull the potential of the coffee from the coffee bean as well. uh, what it tastes of, it's not just that it's bitter. It's just you're not, like you said, you're not able to taste the different flavor profiles that came from the bean. I mean, the bean is ultimately from a fruit tree, right? It's actually the seed of a fruit. So when you think about the different climates and the different areas of the world and the different altitudes and the weather, it's an organic material that people are congesting, just like you're eating any other vegetables and whatnot. It's like it's or other fruits around the world. It's an organic matter, and it has its own uh, flavoring from where it was actually grown from. And yeah, poorly made espresso is where you can't really pinpoint any of that, and it's all just not enjoyable to me. That's kind of my definition of poorly made, or I won't say poorly made. I think we should change the term, like espresso that's made that wasn't at its fullest potential, flavor potential.
Mm. Yeah, I think that really pinpoints like what is badly poured espresso. Yeah, it's when it's when you drink the espresso um and you cannot really see what like so when you're unable to see the coffee bean shine.
Correct.
So so if it cannot shine through so if it cannot shine um thoroughly through the bean and you drink it as an espresso, then you won't be able to see what this bean should be bringing to you. So if it cannot do that, then then a lot of the then a lot of the flavors are being masked out by the other properties of the coffee.
Yeah.
Um, so things like the bitter compounds that you find in the coffee which shouldn't be extracted, those kind of yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah, when you think about espresso or making espresso, uh, it can be quite a fine line in terms of being successful at pulling the maximum potential flavor from the bean and making a completely unpalatable, like not good tasting espresso, right? Like there's so many factors involved, and sometimes it can be such a fine line between screwing it up and wow, this is like the best espresso I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how you control your variables properly. Because if one of those variables is a bit offline, and then yeah, and then as you said, and then and then you'll go straight off the line, and then you would have something that is unpalatable, or if it's something really amazing. Um, so yes, I think if you are able to control these variables and you know what is happening, and if you're able to diagnose any of the extraction faults when you're making espresso, then I think that is a key thing to trying to make trying to get the most out of the bean that you're using.
Yeah, people watching this might think, oh, wow, espresso is too finicky. It's such a finicky way of making coffee that I don't want to make it sound like it is like that. It's not. like you're saying, if you can be consistent and control the variables like temperature, brew time, your tamping, your grind size, and all those variables that you're able to control. If you can be consistent at that, and make fine adjustments to improve or test out like what works and what doesn't with that particular bean, um, it I think it can be quite rewarding.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I think with espresso, like, I think if you think of it, because espresso forms the basis of many of the other drinks, so lattes, cappuccinos, flat whites. So yes, it is simple, and because it forms the base, if you can't get the base right, then the whole drink is practically ruined. But saying that, it it is something that should be relatively straightforward. You shouldn't, like, yes, only people who are like people who really enthuse about coffee, so us, we would get down to bits on the technicalities, but in general, for people watching this, espresso should be something, like, when you make it, it should be something relatively enjoyable. You should just be able to, like, it should just come to you naturally. You should just be able to make it, like, make the espresso, enjoy afterwards, enjoy the result. So it's something that I should say in the end, it should be something enjoyable. The whole process should be enjoyable.
Yeah, and it's just something about brewing the espresso method that personally for me I really enjoy. I maybe because I enjoy more of the technical side of things where I want to make sure that I'm pulling the maximum potential from my coffee bean, right? So for me personally, I really quite enjoy watching espresso being made, making espresso. um, from our last conversation, our last coffee talk, I mentioned that I don't have a espresso maker yet. So uh, but from all the research that I've done, like it just I don't know. I find myself gravitating towards that method of brewing coffee. And I don't know if it's a phase at this time, like, but I mean, with your experience, because you've had so much more experience with your coffee journey, like you've had a few espresso machines, you've probably tried different ways of brewing coffee. Like, is espresso making like still or is it your favorite or still is your favorite?
I think espresso is still, I think it's still my main, I think it's still my main, I think it's still my main coffee to go.
Yeah,
Because since, like, so like, like in our last video, like, I did show my espresso machine, and it is actually, it is actually standing in one of the main places of my kitchen. So I think that just goes to show that espresso is basically one of the most, it's it's one of my go-to coffees. So I like to have uh, so I like to have an espresso. Sometimes in the morning, I preferably would like to have a latte for breakfast just to start my day. And when I make that latte, I enjoy the process. So yeah, so espresso has been one of my, so it has been one of the things that I really enjoyed, and it's something that I hope to maintain, um, maintain going forward.
that's
Um,
great.
yeah, but I think, like, we've been talking about espresso, but I think it might also be nice to talk about, like, how is espresso actually being made? Like, what does it actually mean when we say espresso? So, when we say espresso, what do you like? What do you think the process is?
For me, the espresso is it's a method of extracting flavor from of course coffee is a result, but in that coffee there's so many different flavor notes that are potentially there. So espresso to me is using uh, quite a few variables. Like, when I say variables, I mean like grind size, tamping pressure, water pressure, pre-infusion, brew time, brewing by volume, like all these factors, tied together, and they can potentially bring uh, a certain flavor out from your coffee. So for me, it's not just about a 1 ouncer, crema filled type of coffee that comes out of a machine. It's the way of extracting the best potential flavors from the coffee bean that you're using.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, yeah, I think I think when we extract from the bean, when you have to grind, like when you grind into the portafilter, and then when you tamp, and then when you have a finely bed of coffee, and when you put it into the machine, and when you pull an espresso, all that you're doing is you're just forcing hot water under pressure. So ideally, this is so for argument's sake, usually at 9 bars, you're forcing down hot water through a bed of coffee, and so you're just forcing hot water through a bed of coffee to extract all those flavors out. And in that process, if you're doing it correctly, so I mean by correctly controlling the variables, tamping, dosing, your grinding, if those parameters are controlled correctly or rightly, then what you are extracting, then you should be extracting um the good bits of coffee that you want. And the resulting is that espresso. It's just that 1 or 2 ounce drink, or yeah, or the resulting output. So I
Right.
think that is a short view of what espresso really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, another misconception I think that some people may have about espresso is that because it's seen as a small package, and it's like a bigger punch of caffeine, or it tastes stronger and possibly bitter, that it has more caffeine compared to someone that's drinking like a full 250 milliliter cup of drip coffee that may be coarser grinded and whatnot. So, like, have you heard that? Like that, oh, espresso has more caffeine than any other coffee type of drink that you have.
Yeah, I have heard of that, and I have heard of people saying like espresso would have more caffeine content compared to your usual filter. So like just looking at that, it may sound logical. I mean, it may sound reasonable because basically you are making a really intensified coffee drink, or or um yeah. So but then saying that if you analyze the whole process, the amount of coffee that is hitting through the coffee, it's actually for a very short time. But if you compare it to a filter coffee, the contact with the water and the coffee grinds is a lot longer. Hence, when you're extracting, you are actually pulling more of the caffeine through compared to an espresso, because an espresso you're pulling on average about around the 25-second mark, compared to filter where it may take 1 or 2 minutes. So so I don't think they see these two sides. So yes, the caffeine. So inadvertently, this may mean that the caffeine content may be slightly less with an espresso shot compared to a filter.
Yeah, and I think uh, people may associate espresso having more caffeine because it tastes stronger, like it has more of a coffee type of flavor, and I mean, especially when it's a poorly made espresso, it might be bitter. So I think people associate strong flavors and the maybe the bitterness to, oh, it's gonna affect me more and therefore it has more caffeine, right? And I think that's not a good way of associating the flavor of espresso to being stronger and having more caffeine. Yes, I can understand where people might think that way because yeah, it kind of tastes a little more concentrated, I would say, of coffee, but it doesn't mean that it has more caffeine.
Yeah, I think it's usually like what is the most easiest thing for people to perceive, which, as you said, it's the taste. When people see espresso is strong, it's intensive, and then they tie it that with the caffeine content, thinking that yes, it's strong, it's got punch. So when I drink this strong punching drink, I should also get a caffeine kick as well,
Yeah.
which which it still has caffeine, no doubt, because it's coffee, but but I don't think it has as much coffee. I don't think it has as much caffeine compared to filter.
Yeah, and when we think about consumption of espresso versus consumption of, filtered coffee, like, drip coffee or whatever, it's, you when you take drip coffee, you're not going to drink just an ounce or even 2 ounces. You're going to drink like a mug full of filtered coffee, right? Whereas espresso, traditionally, it's, one, if maybe you have a double shot, it'll be a 2 ounce kind of thing. um, and you kind of have to look at it by, volume of intake, right? So from some of my research, I've they say that caffeine in a 250 milliliter mug of, filtered or drip coffee is anywhere from, you know 80 to 90 grams of caffeine, versus in a double shot of espresso, on average you're looking about 30 to 50 grams of caffeine. So you have to understand, like, people generally do not drink only 1 or 2 ounces of filtered coffee in a mug. Like, they're not going to only fill it like, a quarter or a third up. They're going to fill it up all the way, right? I mean, most people do that. So when you're drinking 4 espressos a day, the potential caffeine might be, anywhere from what, 120 to 150, sorry, 120 to about 200 grams, depending on how many shots you drink. Whereas if you have 4 cups of filtered coffee, it'll be 400, maybe like 300 to 400 grams of caffeine. And I just think it's, a bad way of thinking that, oh, espresso is, it's got the most caffeine.
Yeah, I think it can be quite dangerous. It could actually be a dangerous conception to have because if you always think that espresso has more caffeine and then you sorry, and then if you go to filtered coffee, you may actually end up drinking more filtered coffee compared to espresso, so hence you would be intaking more caffeine. So I think it's quite a dangerous misconception if you're not careful.
That's right. Yeah.
And
And yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and also I think then this leads to people may preferring to have a may and then for people who are in the know and then they may prefer to have an what they may have an what they have what they may prefer to have an Americano, which is basically an espresso with hot water. So that may still have the essence, still may have it's still a different drink compared to a filtered coffee, but it's slightly lighter compared to filtered.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why I was in Italy last year with my wife, and we, you know, we're in Italy, so let's drink espresso and have coffee the Italian way at a coffee bar. And yeah, like, Italians, they love coffee in the morning, or espresso in the morning, and uh, they feel that it's good for uh, like your digestion system, and it's good for your digestion. It's, um, and if you drink espresso in the afternoon, uh, they it's kind of frowned upon like in the culture that that's not like, oh, that's not going to be good for your digestion, and when I think about it, I'm like, well, I was wondering like why can they like they're downing like 4, 8, maybe even 10 shots of espresso a day. Like they might have it in the evening and stuff. And I'm like, that's so much caffeine. Like aren't you like shaking by the midday? And now if you think about it, compared to filtered coffee, like it's in terms of caffeine, it's not volume wise in grams, it's not really that bad if you compare it to a cup of filtered coffee. So I just found that interesting. I'm like, we were trying to experience the Italian coffee culture, and we of course we were learning, so we didn't really completely understand everything, and ordering espresso there is it's an experience in itself.
Oh yeah, I think not to add the social aspect where people like to turn up at espresso bars, have an espresso chat, enjoy the coffee, talk to the barista. So it's also a social aspect as well.
Yeah, it is, and I see that here in Vancouver. In more of the finer espresso cafes. But of course, in Italy, for us, it was difficult because you don't speak Italian. So, yeah, but it was interesting, and we I read up on how to order espresso in Italy and the different names for the drinks, like the difference between like cafe latte and a latte. Like latte just means milk there, right? So when a lot of North Americans go and they order, oh, I'll have a latte, please, and they're like give you steam milk, and it's not what they wanted. So it's quite funny.
Yeah, that actually happened to me once because I was in Rome last year,
Yeah,
and so I was having breakfast, and I thought, and then I remembered, hey, and like Italians like to have a latte in the morning. So I thought, okay, well then I'll have a latte. And then I had the latte. So then I spoke to the barista. I said, "Could I have a latte, please?" And then she said, "Okay." Then she gave me a basically a mug of steamed milk, and I'm like, "Oh dear, I'm having a steamed milk for breakfast." So then I
okay,
did. So I remembered. So like for yeah. So for people watching this, if you're going to Italy and you want a latte, remember to say cafe latte, which means
correct. Yeah,
steamed milk with coffee, which is espresso.
espresso coffee. Yeah, yeah, that's quite the experience.
Yeah, at least I tried it once. Now I know how to order a latte in Italy.
Yeah. Did you have espresso, like just shots of espresso itself, or were you mostly taking milk-based drinks when you were in Italy?
Um, I actually had a mixture of both. So I had lattes and espressos, I've and there was this one shop in Rome where it had really good reviews, and so I just had an espresso there, but I can't quite remember the name. It's quite well known in Rome, and yeah, so I just tried the espresso, and I could say it does live to its name. It's still like the traditional Italy espresso. It's rich, not bitter, and it's just made right. And I could just taste like how the how the traditional Italy how the traditional Italian espresso is like dark, rich, dark chocolate, really heavy base, like really heavy bodied. So yeah, so I got to really experience that, and I was quite happy. And then with the milk drinks, yeah, it was like the flavors were really coming through with the traditional with the traditional Italian espresso. So milk and espresso, yeah. So it was quite an experience. I really enjoyed it.
Great. That sounds like a whole different topic conversation that we can delve into at a later coffee talk for us.
Of course.
That's right. Um, so when you had espresso in Italy, what was the crema like?
I think like I think the crema was from the if I from what I could remember, it was usually quite thick. So it was basically what you would expect. So the crema wasn't, so it wasn't anything thin. If I just leave, even if I just left the espresso sitting there, I could still see that layer of crema.
Right.
So the crema wouldn't dissipate that quickly.
That's right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So I think
mm,
a lot of another misconception that I think is that, oh, espresso must have crema, and it's known to have that crema, and the more crema you have, the better it is, or it has to be like X percentage of crema, or else it's not a properly or well-made espresso. Have you heard of that misconception?
I have actually heard of that misconception, and I was actually watching it, and when I started off in coffee, I actually watched an espresso tutorial, and I could remember this guy saying, when you see the resulting shot, so he made an espresso, and then he said, this shot, like if you see at the top, the more that you could get on the top, the better it is. And when I think about that, I think that can be true, but it shouldn't be an emphasis. Yes, you should still see the crema, but the crema is just a resulting output. It's just a result of all the oils being pulled from the bean. All the flavors are there, but I don't think you should sort of place an emphasis on that. If an espresso is poured correctly, it should show that automatically. And if there's no crema, then there's something wrong with your extraction. So I don't think so. I think you should be focusing on sort of like actually making the espresso rather than saying, oh no, I'm not getting as much. I'm sort of getting like a fraction of an inch less crema compared to the last shot that I had. I, I think I think I don't think you should focus too much on that. So I think it should be focused more on the overall aspect of making the espresso rather than just the crema itself.
Yeah, and you never know, because I mean, with the blend of coffee bean that you're brewing, or even the type of the species of bean is like, because like Robusto bean is known to produce more crema. I mean, so I think you may be using a coffee bean that has, it's a blend, but you don't know how much Robusto bean's been blended into that coffee, right? So you can't compare and say, oh, this espresso shot has, like you said, a fraction less crema, or it has, or you pull a different type of coffee bean you buy, and it has, you know, oh, like 80% crema, like that's like unbelievable, and it's like the best thing in the world. But you have to look at the bean that you're pulling the espresso shot from. Like, is it like, if it's like primarily Robusto bean, then yeah, it's known to be uh, producing like a lot more crema. And I think some of the Italian blends are known to include some Robusto bean in there, just so you kind of get that crema. Like, have you there's this bean called the Lavazza. You heard of Lavazza, right?
Oh, you
Yeah,
love that so.
Lavazza's big, and their bean is in a blue bag. It's called Super Crema. You heard of that one?
I've seen the blue bag before, but I haven't noticed the name. So
Okay, it's yeah, it's called Super Crema. So like they blend the Robusto bean into with the Arabica bean, and they roast it, so it produces this, generally produces like a thicker, more apparent crema that's on top of the espresso shot. And not saying that that's a bad thing, but I just think the misconception is that, oh, if it doesn't have crema, it's not a well-made espresso. It's not good, right? Oh, if it doesn't have X amount of crema on top, like it has to be like, you know, 30% crema at least, or something like that. And it doesn't have that. It doesn't mean that it's a bad shot, or you're not extracting the best flavors from that particular bean. It could be because this shot that you had that had so much crema was primarily robusto bean, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think yeah, I think well, yeah, I think it is good to see that you have crema, but I don't think you should sort of like start going into the measures saying, oh, you must have an inch or have 30% um or um or have 30% amount of crema in the espresso shot. So I think should probably just focus more um on making the espresso itself, and also as you say, sort of remember sort of like focus also on the bean that you're using as well. So if
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Crema is not the end all and be all of espresso making, and I mean, yes, it should have crema because a well-made shot should have crema because it's a natural occurrence, right? Like the oils and the flavors are basically being extracted, and the crema occurs actually because during the roasting process of the coffee bean, um, CO2 is being made, and it stays in the bean. And when you grind it and you extract the coffee, it's the CO2 that's being released, and that's actually creating enzymes and from the flavor of the coffee, and that's what's creating your crema, right?
Mhm.
So robusto beans have been known to produce more CO2 when they get roasted, and that's why therefore generally they have more crema. But yeah, like you said, it's not end all be all way of making espresso, and it doesn't mean that uh, it's a bad shot of espresso or a great shot of espresso. But yeah, it should naturally have some crema, or else you just completely like had really coarse grind, or you like over extract
Yeah.
your espresso, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, that those are some of the misconceptions that I kind of thought of, and feel that some people, and even myself, had when I started getting into coffee. But have you heard of any other misconceptions about espresso?
Um, I think it's just mainly about the roast. So like about the roast of so I think it's just so I think it's just mainly like the roast of the coffee. So like when people say espresso roast, in which yeah, and then people say, oh yes, espresso roast, the bean must be really roasted dark. It must be like it must be like the bean must be like really dark brown. So hence it must taste really bitter afterwards. I think that is one of the big big misconceptions that I have, which I did mention in the like earlier on.
Yeah.
So um yeah, so like yeah, so I think espresso is a brew method. It's not a roast. It's not a type of a bean. You can make espresso with a light roast, and and the results are still enjoyable. It doesn't have to be dark. It can be medium.
Yeah,
So
and I mean with lighter roasted beans, generally, like for me, I find that it's a lot. You taste more of like the citrus and like the brighter acidity from the coffee. That's kind of like what I have experienced from espresso with lighter roasted beans.
oh yeah, and then medium roast and dark roast. Even with dark roast, like maybe not the overly dark, but you can still have a good espresso with a range of roast and roast levels.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I well, that's pretty much it for misconceptions of espresso. We just wanted to make sure that uh, everyone understands what espresso is, and our love for espresso, of course, is stem from the different flavors and different variables that we're all able to control. But I think espresso gets uh, sometimes gets a you know misunderstood name, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think. I think it's just a general view that people have of espresso that it should
That's
be
right. Yeah.
bitter, that
Yeah.
and that you should, as I said before, you should brace through it. You should drink it as if you're drinking like, like really bitter medicine.
Yeah. That kind
So
of
yes,
brings me to another thought I had though. Like if you think about like wine connoisseurs, right? Like when when like I don't understand wine as much as of I think a lot of other people. Like I'm not a wine drinker myself, but like there's some like wine tasters and really high level aficionados of like wine in the wine industry, and they're able to taste like, oh, I can taste the blueberries tickling the back of my tongue, and the body of this Merlot is really rich of like the ocean. I don't know. I'm just making things up, but like like when, but really like with espresso, it's properly made espresso and well made espresso, where you're able to dial in your variables to pull the maximum potential of that bean. That's what it's supposed to be like literally, like you taste the honey, the fruits, the acidity, and the different, maybe the citrus, like that's what it's supposed to be like. And um I'm not saying like wine people are snobs or espresso enthusiasts or like that, like snobs. It's not about that, but that's like with wine, of course you're making it, you're fermenting grape, and that's where it is. And grape also grows in different regions all over the world, all different altitudes, all different weather conditions, just like coffee bean. And um, espresso it can be poorly made just like a wine, right? So when you actually properly make the espresso, like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to taste, is the different flavor profiles from that bean.
yeah, I think what espresso basically does, I think it magnifies a certain taste perception of a bean. I think as what we covered like in our last video, a filtered like espresso takes a good different perception of the flavors of a bean compared to a filter.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so espresso and I just like that. So I still have filtered. I like to have filtered. I like to have espresso, but espresso is my more of my go-to um type of coffee.
Yeah. I think when I actually upgrade my grinder, like we talked about last episode, and get an semi-automatic espresso machine, I'm gonna have to be like, I'm the type of person that will try to, I like the technical things, so I'll try to dial in like the grind size and all the variables. Like I'll probably be going through like bags and bags of coffee bean just to dial in, for that particular bean, to pull like the maximum potential flavors from the espresso, right? So I think that's what's
Yeah,
gonna happen when I get to that point.
yeah, but I think saying that, like, I did remember one guy saying, like on the net, to actually really just to actually really get the flavors from a bean, you should at least go through at least 1 kilo of coffee.
Wow.
So, and so basically, if you really want to taste this single or this single origin coffee or this blend, you should at least have 1 kilo of that coffee and just work through it, just so that each time when you pull an espresso on this day, taste it, and then taste it the next day, the day after that, until when you finish the bag, and so then just so that you could really understand the coffee, you dial in, you control your variables properly. So I think yes, I did find that view quite interesting. So yeah, so no doubt when you make espresso, it's not just that small dose that you'll be making. It will be quite a few bags.
Maybe I'll get up to 4 shots a day like you.
Maybe. In which I only go through about 250 grams bag a week.
250 grams, so quarter kilo, right? Yeah, that's about quarter
Yeah,
of a
so
kilo.
yeah, so a quarter
Yeah,
of a kilo.
yeah.
So a kilo of coffee usually lasts me about a month
Okay.
or
That's
less. So yeah,
that sounds so bad. Yeah, I'd
yeah.
like to get into about roasting and how fresh coffee beans stay, but we'll save that for another chat, another time.
Oh yeah.
So we'll move on to our next topic here is about tamper bases actually. So
Oh, tampers.
tapping is one of the variables that you can control while making espresso. And there's different types of tamper bases out there, from flat to convex to ripple to like they even have like a US convex and like a Euro type convex. And I didn't know this before, but I recently learned about the different tamper bases, and I was wondering, like, what's your experience with tamper bases, and do you prefer one over another, and which ones have you tried?
Um, I think firstly I'll go through my brief history of the tampers I've had.
Okay.
So, but this will be quick. So when I started off, I started off with a 58, or I'll be exact, I started with a 57 millimeter tamper because there was this theory online where like there was this theory online from one of the retailers in UK. They were saying that because if you look at the basket, because if you look at one of the portafilter baskets, they taper at the bottom. So hence, when you're tamping, you should be tamping just to meet that small circumference at the bottom. So if you use a full-on 58, then you're going to be making the edges a bit more, a bit more, a bit more dense. So hence, you should use a 57 millimeter. So then I thought, that sounds very interesting. So when I went into a shop, I found a really nice 57 chrome plated chrome covered tamper. So I got that, and then I started tapping, but then it felt weird because I could see because I could still see the rim. I could see like a slight edge, like a
Right.
small gap, and I thought, yeah, this doesn't feel right. And when I was pulling the espressos, like not that it made a really big difference, but I felt not all grinds were being tampered. So then I then swapped that for a 58, which did improve things a lot. Well, not a lot, but I could see like a small like a I did see a small difference. Then afterwards, yeah, so that was one of my first tampers. Then after that, I got a, I'm not sure if you heard of the Reg Barber tampers.
I have. They're actually made from a gentleman here on Vancouver Island.
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
Yes.
and I actually have one right here, Reg Barber.
Oh, beautiful.
So I actually got one because these are really because I feel really nice in the hand. Um, Yeah. So this is a stainless steel flat base tamper. It's really made precisely to 58 millimeters. Feels really nice in the hand. And when I got this, it 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 just felt each time when I was tamping, it just felt really nice. Um, so yeah, so these don't come cheap, I do have to say, but it feels really nice. So this is a flat base. Um, then afterwards, then then I started getting the VST precision baskets. But we won't go down that road about talking about precision baskets. But because as soon as one of those baskets came out, then a new size of tampers started coming out because the people who make the VSTs they recommend a 58.35 millimeter tamper. So they recommend the flat base. So I thought, okay, I just got VST. Why not I just try what does a 58.35 millimeter tamper do? So I got one relatively cheap from a guy who makes tampers in the UK. Um, So I got that, and yeah, so the tampers actually fit quite snug. Quite liked it. It felt quite nice. Um, yeah, and then afterwards, and then I got myself a new tamper, and this is my current one that I use. So this tamper, so it's a wooden stainless steel convex. So this is a convex 58.4 millimeter. So this is a tall gold finger. So yeah, so I really like this tamper because it feels really nice. It's convex. Um, yeah, so I use this every day. Um, yeah, so this is my current tamper at the moment. But when you talk about what my thoughts on flat versus convex, I actually prefer convex because because if you see that the base is it's a bit is a bit round at the bottom. So what that does is it actually pushes. So when you tamp onto the coffee, so when you put the tamper into the portafilter basket and the coffee, it actually pushes the coffee to the edge. So then this would encourage to make a good seal. So hence you won't have. So hence that would try to. So hence that would avoid producing any side channeling. So side channeling is so like water always takes the path in a coffee bed with less resistance. So what I feel is that the convex tamper tries to prevent that. So it may not be like a big dramatic thing. So I'm not saying that the convex is way much better than a flat. I think it just comes down to personal preference, but I prefer convex because like not only does it feel nice, but I know for sure that the sides of the filter basket would be sealed properly. In
Yeah,
which um yeah and yeah so my personal preference is a convex, um but not to go off in a tangent. There is actually also another type of tamper which is the tapered. So it's a tamper that I think it was first created by a guy called Matt Perger, or 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 um or yeah, I think a guy called Matt Perger. But many apologies if I do pronounce his name wrongly. So his tamper is flat, but his tamper base is tapered. And what you could do that encourages for you to nutate, and that helps to even out the grinds. And it aims to have maximum coverage over the basket. So yes, I think I've covered a lot of things in regards to tampers. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on the flat versus convex?
um, because well, personally, like, of course, I haven't tried. I've only tried one, and of course, I don't have my own espresso machine, so I haven't had the opportunity to try all the lovely temps that you have there. I think I counted about four there that you have, and I'm still learning, but it's interesting to see that there's, even with just a simple uh, task of the simple step of espresso making, where you are compacting the your coffee ground into a well compacted, uh, polished bed of coffee, so that even the water can flow through evenly, the most even way it can possibly flow through. um, that there's so many different ways and styles and methods of tamping itself. And of course, the tamper is just a tool that you use to compact the coffee into your portafilter. But I'm excited, actually, to try out the different types. I can see how it can get pretty expensive, being able to try all these different tamps. And I do agree with you that the Reg Barbers, I've looked at them, They go for a pretty penny, and you're lucky to have one yourself. And I'm sure you've had very good shots with all the tampers that you had, right? So
Oh
um,
yeah. Um, yeah. Although I do have to note, I think tampers, I think they're basically like the jewelry of a barista. So,
yeah,
so
it's definitely the showpiece. It's like, oh, what's that guy doing? He's like,
you
you know,
press.
got this 90-degree on his elbow, and he's pushing down on something. It's like the mystery. It's like everyone can put the portafilter into the brew head and then hit the button, right? But that tamping action is like, oh, that's special, right? And especially when you have a nice piece of jewelry like a shiny stainless steel tamper, or like even yours with the wood grain. That's actually, it looks
Yeah.
like a beautiful piece as well.
I also
um
like this one.
yeah, that one, yeah. And
Well, they're not too just well, not too sharp though. But yeah, but I think tampers are yeah. I think I think it's crucial for the barista to actually have something that they really like, they enjoy. So a tool that they really so aesthetically speaking, or even functionally speaking, if it makes the barista, I think if it's something that the barista really likes, they enjoy using, then of course then the process of making the espresso would obviously be always would always be enjoyable. So I like my tampers.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I think it's one of those pieces of the puzzle of espresso making, and one of those pieces of equipment that you you are most interactive with it in terms of making espresso. You actually taking this flat or whatever convex piece of metal, and you're pushing down on this bed of coffee. Whereas when you're grinding, like all the other variables, when you're grinding, the grinder's doing it for you, right? You're pushing a button and coffee ground comes out. When you're actually pulling the shot, or the pre-infusion, or controlling the water temperature, like your espresso machine is doing that for you, right? Like you're just telling it what to do in a sense, and trying to
Hmm.
control it. Whereas tamping, it's like the only piece there that you are physically taking this tool, and you're pushing it down yourself. It's not a machine doing it, although there are tamping machines out there where you put the portafilter in, and you pull this lever, and it's supposed to do like 30 pounds or whatever pounds you set it to of compacting pressure, and and then you brew your espresso shot that way. But aside from that, like the tamper is like the only thing tool that you are controlling with your body, right? So I think that's why the jewelry comes in, and baristas feel it's that one piece that it's special to them, and special in the method of making espresso, right? What are your
Oh yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, and also I think not only on the jewelry aspect, but I think it's also indispensable because imagine if you're making espresso but you forgot your tamper.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go.
In which that actually happened to me once because I actually have a portable espresso maker. So, but we won't. But we could. But I could show that to you. But I could show that to you. At a later video. So it's called the My Pressy Twist, and it's no longer being made. So I brought that to work once. So it takes a filter basket, so 53 ml basket, and I forgot to take my 53 ml tamper. So it's a flat base tamper, and I forgot to take that with me. So I was grinding all my coffee. I dozed, and and then I looked inside my bag, and then I thought, "Where's my tamper?" So it just shows that yeah. So then basically, what I had to do in the end, I had to take the back end of a flat spoon to tamp, and then it felt really, it just felt so. So tampers are indispensable, but they but the jewelry aspect just makes it just makes the barista feel, yes, it's I like my tool. It accomplishes something simple, but I just say you must have a tamper.
Absolutely. I mean, it is part of making espresso, right? Like you do that. It's one of those steps where you don't leave out, right? So yeah, it is indispensable. And but that's interesting how you used the. How did that shot turn out though?
It turned out surprisingly good, but maybe not as good as if I would had to use a tamper.
That's
But
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But when I had to tamper the spoon, I had uneven pressure on the coffee because the spoon could because I didn't have a perfect 53 mil circumference flat spoon, so I had to like slightly press, bearing in mind trying to like evenly press on each side. It was horrendous. But
You're
the shot still tasted okay. It was still palatable, but I guess I was just lucky.
Yeah, you're were all your coworkers watching and like, oh, Alex is gonna make this amazing coffee for us. He's brought his machine in today, and there you are. You're like star of the show, and you like look in your bag, and you're like, uh oh.
September. Yeah. Luckily, I only had like one or two. Well, I only had like one. I think one colleague with me. But yeah, but I don't think he really noticed that I
Oh,
was
okay.
missing the camper. So I was like, shh, 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 shh. Shh. Yes, I was trying to be. Yeah, so I didn't try to make a scene. So I was like, okay, I'll tamp with a spoon today.
It's like, oh, nothing abnormal here. Just making espresso. Just tap with a spoon today.
But that was my only blunder.
Yeah.
Only blunder. So yeah, when I'm at home, no doubt I will have my tampers with me.
Of course, yeah. Hey, at least the spoon, provided like a convex type of tap, right? Right?
That is true. Yes, yes. But it's like an oval, like an oval shaped complex.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the history of the tappers that you have with the different bases. You mentioned that you started out with a 57 millimeter with your 58 millimeter portafilter. Um,
Yeah.
was that the Ranchilio Silva portafilter by any chance?
That was a generic. So this was when I still had my Gauger Classic.
Okay.
Um, so I was using the stock basket. So it was a stock basket that came. It was a generic stock basket. So the stock baskets, so I don't have one to hand at the moment. But the baskets are tapered at the bottom. So if you look at the bottom where all the holes are, um, the circumference of that is smaller compared to the rim of the basket.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So it sort of tapers in, and then I was researching online and like the and like the own and like on one of the retailers' sites, like it was saying like you should use a 57 millimeter tamper just so that you would get the maximum coverage at the bottom.
Yeah. Was it
Then
was it a double shot basket?
so it was a standard so it was a standard I think 14 gram stated basket.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah,
Um,
because what I've noticed as well is that yeah, like if your basket is tapered, let's just say you have a double shot, 14 to 16, 18 gram basket, uh, and it's tapered, when you like say it's 58 millimeters at the top and it tapers down maybe to 57 or whatever it is, that when you use a 58 mil, because your coffee ground is there, and the finer it is that you can't um, sorry, the finer it is, you can actually compact further. But depending on the amount of dosing that you do, that the 58 mil will still be suitable quite well for it, because it actually won't get stuck in the portafilter because you have your bed of coffee that's, elevating up. Like you're not gonna push all the way down to like literally almost the bottom of the portafilter, right? Because you still have an X amount of coffee ground in there, right? So like, did that cross your mind or?
Um, I'll say back then, I did read that with a pinch of salt. Like someone had read off from the retailer's website, and then when I found, so it did cross my mind, but I was thinking, so like if you tamp with a 57 millimeter, like yes, you would be having coverage at the bottom, but then what about the sides? Because you will still be having like I'll say about one you will still be having like a 1 millimeter gap. So then that could potentially encourage channeling around the side.
Right.
So you would be having more water running down the side, and then that water's going to get stuck because of the tapered, and then that could potentially, I don't know, like minutely, like could even affect the taste of the resulting espresso at the end. So yeah, so now that I primarily use VST baskets, and they're straight sided. So basically, there's no use for a 57 millimeter that, and actually, it would be a very bad decision. So I'm actually very glad that I got rid of my 57 millimeter tamper, even though it looked really nice. So so I traded it for 58, and and it worked it worked out a treat.
Yeah, you
Well,
mentioned that
what?
when you know, with that same portafilter, when you moved from a 57 to the 58, that your shots, that it actually made a difference. You know, although it might not have been a big difference, but what was different? Like, what did you notice that was better about it?
I don't know. I think it was more of conscious difference because I think now that I know that I'm using a 58, it like I'm getting a maximum coverage. Um, I think the obvious would be less channeling due to tamping because I think if you tamp with a small tamper, even I think if you tamp with a small tamper, like so let's say if I have a 57 mil and I'm tapping into a 58 mil basket and I tamp more towards this one and I tamp towards one edge. The one you the one you extract, then I saw less of the side channeling of the part that I wasn't tamping. So yes, I could do multiple tamps in the basket. But I'm thinking, why would I want to do that? Because like, why would I want to tamp northeast, southwest? Like, why do I want to tamp? Why do I want to do multiple tamps when I could just do it all in one go?
Yeah, and that also encourages like uneven bed, right? Like,
Yeah,
because you got a little bit of a gap on one side. Okay, I'll just shift it over and tap, and then okay, what about the other side? Now we're gonna shift it the other way and tap. So each time you press down, it's not gonna be the exact same pressure. So it that's kind of like promoting uneven bed of coffee, right?
yeah, and that could inadvertently affect the resulting like so you would be getting like an uneven taste of your espresso shot in the end. Um, yeah, and because because when you have uneven, then you may have in your coffee bed like certain parts of the puck may have less resistance, so maybe less dense. So water would be gushing down that route rather than trying to extract some of the coffee on the other side. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, for me it does.
So
Yeah.
I think tamping should be something really simple. Like you shouldn't need to do multiple things. It should be just like straight down, straight press down and go. and maybe a little nutating if you want. But yeah, but we'll go.
Yeah, we could talk about tamping method and techniques on a different topic another time. But yeah, so
Yeah,
with the convex based tamper that you have there, sorry, I forgot the brand or the make of that.
it's a Tor. So it's a Tor. So it's made by So it's a Tor. So THOR Tor
Okay,
Goldfinger. So
Goldfinger.
it's made by a German manufacturer. And they make really nice tampers. So
Yeah. Are
um,
the are so the Reg Barber you have and that tall tamper you have, are the bases interchangeable with the handles or is it fixed?
they are fixed. So because they're made by two different, because they're made by two different manufacturers, so they're not. So unfortunately, they're not really interchangeable. But but maybe I haven't tried myself, but maybe because the tampers are fixed together, so the handle and the base that are screwed on by screw. So even if the screw is the same, the the resulting well the end result may look a bit weird.
Right.
So I think it's best if you go with if you switch handles and bases with the same um from the same manufacturer.
Right. Now,
So
the convex uh, base that you have there on the tall tamper,
yep,
um, I've seen there's like a difference in terms of U.S. convex and Euro convex. Have you seen that distinction? And do you have any thoughts about that?
I have because I think from what I've observed, because when I bought my 53 mil flat tamper for my portable espresso maker, so my Pressy Twist. I actually got that tamper ordered from the US. This guy showed on his listing like the different tamper bases. So he showed like the Ripple, the US curve, the Euro curve. And what I observed was that the Euro curve has more of a bell shaped, so it's more round. But the American curve is not as belled, so it's in between. So it's so it's less curved and more flat, if that makes sense, but still curved.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen as well. Is that and observed that the U.S. one is like a between a flat and like the Euro curve, right? It's like kind of like that in between step of going all the way completely curved with the Euro curve.
Yeah, so I think it tries to capture the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
but I think I would prefer to go fully on convex, which is the Euro curve.
Yeah. Do you find that, like you mentioned, like with the convex, you like it and it helps with pushing the ground outwards towards the edge of the portafilters, so hence you prevent a lesser chance of channeling water through the side of the portafilter between the ground and the portafilter. But have you, like when you compare like pulling a shot with a flat one and your Euro curve convex one, like did you notice a difference? Like keeping everything else, keeping all the other variables constant, right? Like did you notice a difference, and what was that difference?
I think I'll be very truthful. Like, I think, like, I did, like, when I used a convex, I find that more of my, more of my pores were centered. So I use a bottomless portafilter, with my current machine. And so most of my pores are centered. But I realized when I had used my flat, so my flat tamper, there somehow was more there so I find that there was more and there was more channeling. So basically when I say channel so in channeling, when you see it when you see the extraction, from a bottomless portafilter, you will see multiple streams. But when I used my convex, I saw one centered stream going down the middle.
And that was
So
quite consistent, or
so I'll say it's fairly consistent. So I think from then on, I've been stuck to convex.
I see. Have you
So
ever used a US convex?
I actually haven't because maybe in the UK, because since we are in Europe, so most likely when we get convex tamper,
Euro
it
curve.
would be the Euro curve. So I would be quite interested to see how curved, like how less of a curve it is.
Yeah. Interesting. I never knew that they made or you can actually get, well, I suppose it's of course possible, but I never actually knew they made tamps with such precision. Like you mentioned, you had a 57.35 millimeter tamp, and I was like, wow, that's like down to the hundredth of a millimeter. that's that's quite precise, right?
Yeah, yeah. Just to correct you slightly, that it was a 58.35.
Okay, sorry, yeah. I
So
remember the 0.35 part.
yeah, because I think I could remember like the makers of the VST baskets are like precision baskets. So like the manufacturer was like, so they will recommend because I think they measure like on average, I think about 58.5 or something. Yeah, so then that is really on the top of my head, but yeah, but many apologies if I do get my information wrong. But the manufacturer they do recommend a 58.35 mil tamper. So after when they said that, so they even made their own tamper, which is 58.35 flat, recommended for their own VST baskets. Um, then yeah, and then when I got my 58.35 tamper from a from a from a tamper maker in the UK, so when I bought it off him, he got the tamper out and he got his vernier calipers just to show me that it was really 58.35. So he showed me like it was really precise, and I think the justification of having a 58.35 tamper with a VST basket is so that it so that you don't want to hit you don't want to you don't want the tamper to be too snug, because if it's too snug, then there's literally no movement inside. But you don't want it to be too small, but you don't want it to not cover as much. So I guess VST just find that 58.35 is like this sweet spot.
Yeah,
Um, but saying that, with my current convex tamper, it's a 58.4, and it still works a treat. But yeah, so it's only like 0.05 of a difference.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
it's like less than a hair, isn't it? So it's that's how precise the tamping has become.
it is very precise, and a lot of but I have seen people where they've conducted experiments and having a 58 millimeter tamper compared to a 58.35 or 58.4 should still do the job relatively well. So I think if yeah, so I think there shouldn't be like a majorly so I don't think there would be like a major difference between having the two tampers. So if you already have a 58 and you don't want to spend anymore, then I think it should do the job.
Yeah,
Um,
if you start out slowly, like I mean, you don't like I mean, most people won't start out with a VST basket, right? Like the precision basket. Like, uh, are there manufacturers of espresso machines that when you purchase them, they come with a precision basket, or mostly just the standard commercial size 58 millimeter? Like, I mean, if we're talking about higher end espresso machines.
when I got my current espresso machine, they just came with their own basket, so it wasn't a precision basket. So I had to buy my own VSTs. Um, yeah, so I think I think it's only when you go to the resellers where they may well if they're being nice they may even bundle in a precision basket. So you could get the VST or I'm not sure if you've heard of the IMS.
No, I'm
So
not too well versed with precision baskets at this time.
yeah, so
Yeah.
those so I think less likely so I don't think the manufacturers would include a precision basket. Like not that I've seen so far. Um except except one brand which is the La Marzocco
Okay.
because they make the Strada basket which is the equivalent of the VST basket and they are made in the same factory as I've researched. So maybe if you maybe if you do get the La Mod Zoco the Strada machine, then probably you would also get then probably you would then get the precision basket since
Uh,
that's what the basket is called. So it will probably it will come with the machine as well.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. So have you, with your different temps, like, of course, with a different base, it's going to yield a different weight, right, to the temp. So have you, like, when you're looking for a temp and you're deciding, oh, should I get a flat, convex, ripple, whatever the shape or finish of the bottom part of the temp is, but is there consideration in terms of the weight of the tamp? Like, of course, everyone's different. They're going to tamp at different pressures based on, your strength, your body type, your height, your build. So, and of course your weight as yourself. So, having all those things considered, like, is the tamper base weight a major consideration when one is purchasing a tamp?
I think weight like so this is coming from my own personal view. I would prefer to let the tamper do the tamping, if that makes sense. So when I put the tamper into the portafilter, I would prefer it to sit onto the coffee bed. I would sort of like want it to do the natural push. Then I push it down. So so I think so that's my personal preference. So I would prefer to let the tamper do its job. Um, but obviously I don't want the tamper to be overly too heavy. But it's very hard. But it's very hard nowadays unless if you're really crazy and you want to get 2 kilo tamper. Um, but like most stainless steel tampers that I've seen, they only weigh about about 500 grams, about half a kilo, which I think converting to pounds, I think that's like 1 pound something. But
Uh, Yeah, rough. It's 2.2 pounds per kilo. So yeah, it's about
yeah, so about a
one.
pound.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
I think it's yeah. So I think my sweet spot is sort of like going for the 500 grams, half a kilo weight because I like to let the I like to let the weight do the tamping, but saying that it shouldn't really make much of a difference because you could still get a lighter tamper. So if you get an aluminium um um an aluminium made tamper base, those are the lightest of the tampers. But well, I mean for the metal ones, unless if you go for wood, but less likely you will see a wood one. But the aluminium tampers are the lightest, so you could even go for that and then just press it down yourself. But I just preferably like to have that weight to it, just so
right.
that just so I could let just so I could feel a bit of the weight when I pick it up and when I press it down.
Yeah, makes you
So
feel like it's more substantial, right?
it's something that I want to pick up. I could feel a bit of weight and then I just press it down afterwards.
Makes it feel
So
like it's actually like a substantial, real tool that you're using.
yeah, um yeah, so I think so I think so I think the so this so I think in terms of the weight, um the wooden ones would be the lightest from what I could gather. And it would be the aluminium, stainless steel, bronze, then you would have the copper. So I think the copper base is the most heaviest, but copper is the most easiest tamper to get too damaged because copper is a relatively
It's
it's a
soft. Yeah.
it's a relatively soft metal. Then bronze, but bronze it looks very nice because it's golden colored, but it's also quite soft as well compared to stainless steel. So stainless steel is sort of like it, so it doesn't damage as easy, but yeah, but it still has a good weight to it. So some people like to have bronze. I know a guy that has a copper, well, that I've seen on the net. So yeah,
Yeah.
so all my tampers have been stainless steel.
Yeah. So it's probably beneficial, like to use a tamp that, I mean, if you're using it often, to get a tamp that is uh that can hold up to damage better. Because think about it, like you're tamping with your base, and if you drop the tamp or somehow it gets nicked, and your base is not completely smooth and flat, now that you're tamping, you're going to make that same indentation mark on your bed of coffee, right? So it's important to get something that, I mean, my opinion is that, it's probably better to get something more durable in terms of a metal, so that you uh, don't get certain indentations when if your tamper base ever gets damage on the side that meets the coffee. But have you ever had a damaged tamp and used one, and does it actually make a difference?
Um, I'll say I have had like really minor scratches. So I have had like really minor scratches, but even so, but I could see what you are saying because like I don't think light scratches would really do anything. But what would really affect was, so let's say if on the edge, so let's say if you take on my flat ridge barber, if you
Beautiful.
have a, thank you. Yeah, so if you have a really big, d- so if you have so if you have an indentation like right at the edge here, so let's say it goes really deep, then that would affect the coffee bed because that bit won't be tamped anymore. So you
Right.
would just have that sort of like nick in the so you would sort of have that sort of like I don't know that part of the coffee bed not being tamped, and that could potentially affect the extraction because that bit you're not pressing down as much.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucial to like when you get tampers to also protect them. But for a peace of mind, I have seen where they are titanium tampers,
Wow.
but the cost a lot more. And I've seen that black titanium tampers, and they like I haven't seen them in person, but I've seen that pictures, and they look really nice. And they are more and they're more durable, so they're more resistant to scratches. Um, yeah, so tampers can cost quite a lot.
Yeah, I've seen some tap bases that cost more than like some nice espresso machines. Like, wow, that's I guess it's the jewelry of baristas, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, great, great. That's like a lot of information that I've learned today about tampers and tamps. And thanks for showing us your different tamps and your collection there.
Oh, no worries. Like yeah, too bad I can't show my whole collection.
Oh, you have more?
Well, they're actually hidden in boxes because I don't really use them as much.
Okay.
But yeah, but it's just only my 53 mil and my other 58 millimeter tamper, which I use, which I use on my mat, which I use on my mats as super jolly because I sometimes don't use a hopper with that, so I put it down the throat.
Right.
So that's when I'm single dosing. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Um,
That's great.
but I think one thing just to finish off is plastic tampers are near to plastic tampers. Um, I think I just have to mention that plastic tampers they are near to being useless. because they don't cover the basket. They're plastic, they're really light, and some people like to use them. I don't like to use them. Yeah, end of story.
Yeah. I've yeah, I mean some of the I'm gonna say like more of the prosumer type of espresso machines that I've seen come with the plastic tamps, and some styles range from a spoon type. Like I've seen espresso machine come with like it's like a tool. It's like one end. Think of it as a spoon, okay? So one end you actually have the scooper to scoop your ground into, I guess, your portafilter, right? And the other end of the spoon, the handle, and on the end of the handle, it's like your tamp, and it's like this big cylinder. Not even a cylinder; it's like a disc, and you place that over your portafilter, and yeah, like you said, it doesn't even cover like all the way to the edge, and you're pressing down like literally like with your two thumbs, like you put it over and you hold the basket like with your two hands, and you're like pushing it down like like you're playing Nintendo, right? Like a controller almost. So like, I've seen it. I'm like, I mean, I guess if it's for a prosumer machine, like if it floats your boat, it does compact the what do you call it, the bed of coffee. Um, and of course, those type of machines tend to use more like they come with pressurized portafilters. So when you think about it, like compacting to precision and making sure you have a polished bed of coffee and making sure it's even and it's not going to channel for those type of machines, I like you're using a pressurized portafilter. It's not going to make it will probably make a difference if you actually use a nice proper tamp. However, you know it's meant so that it's not like you have to get the high end stuff and be all professional and whatnot. And of course, on the other end, I've also seen plastic tamps where uh, they actually kind of look like a cylinder, but it's kind of like think about like a barbell, like if you're lifting weights and you're looking at a barbell, like what there's two discs on each end, and there's like a little stick in the middle, and then you take it, you press it in, and I've actually used one of those on a prosumer type espresso machine, and it feels like I'm going to snap it. Maybe I was pushing too hard, I don't know, but the plastic tap is so insubstantial that in terms of the weight, it's not it doesn't feel like you're actually pushing down. So you tend to push a little harder, and what happens is like it feels like I'm gonna snap the tap in half and whatnot and cut my hand up. But that's kind of like my experience with plastic taps, and I totally agree with you. It just doesn't. Yeah, just don't use them.
Yeah, I think so like I think when I got my like I know I got plastic tampers when I got the Gauge Classic and when I got my Gauge Akil, which is my manual lever espresso machine. And yeah, so I don't really use it. I don't really use my plastic tampers at all. Um, so yeah, so as you did say, they do feel quite weak. And when you do tamp, it feels as if you have to tamp even harder just to compensate because it's just so light, flimsy. Um, yeah, so I think the bottom line is if you could avoid it, don't try not to use them. But as you said, if it floats your boat, I don't see why not.
Yeah,
But
I
I
mean,
have,
like taps get expensive. Like with your experience, you can tell taps get expensive. So if that's the only thing you have right there, like it's better than using a spoon or someone's baseball bat at the end of the baseball bat or something. You know what I mean? It's like you use what you have, right? But yeah, like if you're looking for something that's gonna elevate your espresso making and your espresso results, then look at something that's metal.
oh, very true. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I
yeah,
think just use what you have. So yeah,
that's a good point that you brought up about the plastic taps. We didn't touch it because that is actually a tamper base, I guess. consider it as a
Yeah.
type of Tamp base. So yeah,
So yeah, so it's another tamper for for consideration, which I wouldn't really recommend.
that's right.
But
Yeah,
as you as well.
yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll move on to our next topic. Now we're gonna talk about
About
single origin
single
beans
origin beans
versus
versus
blended beans. So, I mean, Alex, are you there?
Yep, I'm still here. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So with this topic, I've, from the beans that I've tried, I've tried single origin. I've also tried blended beans. Mostly blended beans because some of the single origin stuff that I'm able to get here is it's a little more expensive. But I've had good flavors from both, and good experiences with both, and brewing through my Aeropress. And what have been your experiences, Alex, with single versus blended beans?
Um, I think I think with single origin, I think I find that they're more like the bases of like the tastes of a coffee. So in comparison to a blend, I find that blends usually are more are more complex, they're more compounded based. So I find that if I really wanted something natural, natural, something that something that I want to focus more of this coffee, then I would go for the single origin because because that is basically what is the natural state of that coffee. And when you have a blend, it's just like a mixture of those coffees and to bring a newer to introduce newer flavor notes. So let's say so I find so I think it really comes down to like what are your taste preferences at at any given time. So let's say at present I'm drinking a single origin from Mexico. So it was the same bean that I was using last time. So the espresso shot that I poured in our last video.
Right.
Um, yeah, so at the moment I prefer to have single origins, just on the basis that I just want to know more about the coffee. I want to be able to taste the tastes of that coffee, the flavor notes before I start going into before I start going into like what other single origin beans could I mix together to bring a to bring a palatable um um flavor note in the end.
That's right.
So yeah, so I think it's more like nat so I think single origins, as I have been saying, I think it's more of a natural base.
That's right. Um, do you prefer single origin, like the light roast, medium roast, dark roast? Like, what has your experience with that been?
Um, when I started out, I preferred the darker roasts because just purely I find that darker roasted coffee were actually more maybe I when I started out I quite like the heavy taste, so like the big body, big like dark, sort of like the dark flavor notes, like dark chocolate flavor notes. But now I'm more leaning towards the light because as you roast the coffee, you are sort of like you are sort of like not really overriding the flavors, but the lighter the roast, the more closer the more natural taste of the coffee you get. So I'm not saying that dark roasts are bad. I think lighter roasts, so I think they bring the different aspects of the coffee. So at the moment, I prefer lighter roasts because I just want to be able to bring more of the natural flavors. So more of the natural so the more of the so bring so just trying to bring out more of the acidity.
Right. Yeah. So
Um,
with I mean, with single origin versus blended, um, what other differences are there besides like what you just mentioned, like the flavor is more natural with single origin because you're not getting a complex blend of beans. So, aside from that, like what have you noticed that are different between those type of coffee beans that you can get?
Um, well, that is actually a good question because I think with single origin, apart from the natural aspect, I think it's also like the extraction because I like to picture single origins like a single line. So you are only getting a single line of taste. So it is basically you are focusing on one line of taste from this bean. So this bean may taste more acidic, more citrus, more chocolatey, orangey, compared to a blend which is like multiple lines that so you're getting so that you're getting so let's say if you had a bean that has flavor notes of honey and you have a bean that tasted of chocolate, then when you blend them together, then you would probably get like a chocolatey honey kind of taste. I guess what I've noticed is with single origin, I could focus on one flavor note. So I could like not just one flavor note, but just like the but just that but just the singular characteristic flavor note, the flavor notes of this coffee.
Have you you've probably tried like two types of single origins, and then you like the flavor of both, and you're like, hey, this is a good maybe a good blend. So you just throw the two single origins together, and there you go. That's basically a blended a roast, right?
Yeah, so that is basically what a blend is. So that is what roasters do. So usually what I have observed that is advised is usually when roasters roast coffee, would prefer not to they would prefer not to blend it when the beans are still green. They would prefer to blend it after it's been roasted, just so that because 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 there are different varietals of coffee, you don't want to over roast or under roast certain like you don't want to over roast or under roast the coffees in that batch. So you would still want to roast it and then blend after the roasting.
Yeah, you'll
So
probably want to taste your particular roast, uh, taste the flavor profiles first, and then if you feel that it's a good blend with something else that you've tried, that's where the blending comes into play, right?
yeah, so that is what I think so that is possibly what what I think roasters would do when they roast, like when they would create blends.
Yeah.
So they'll cup each coffee, then once when it's good, then they'll roast it, then they'll roast it individually, and then just mix it together. Um, yeah, so that's possibly what I would do as well. So I would roast it individually, then and then just mix them together afterwards.
Interesting. Now, what I've noticed is that single origin has been so much more expensive than blends. And if you think about it, I mean, roasting one line of bean versus roasting.
God bless you.
Excuse me, there I had to sneeze. My apologies, but yeah, what I've noticed is that single origin it seems like it's more expensive than when I'm looking at blended beans. And to me, I'm like, well, with single origin, you're just blending. I'm sorry, you're just roasting one line of bean, and you you roast it to your favorite roasting profile, and that's what you're selling. Whereas a blended roast, you're roasting multiple lines, and you're just blending it together, and you're tasting it and you're blending it together to what you feel is a good flavor, a flavor note from that blend. So it seems like there's more work with blended roast, but somehow the single origins, you know, cost more. Like over here in North America, it generally costs a lot, quite a bit more actually, probably about 30% more. And so, to you, is it like a like single origin? Is it like a thing like, oh, this is you know how now it's like, okay, it's free range chicken, you know, it's better because this chicken had exercise, or or you know, it's you know, antibiotic, non GMO, like whatever vegetable or whatever, and it's better because you know it's healthier for you. Like with single origin, is it like, do you think it's the price premium is because it's more special that it's single origin, single estate type of bean?
Um, I think it might just be special because you're just roasting coffee that has, like, you're just roasting especially just for this. I think you're just roasting just especially just for this. Like, you're just roasting this bean by itself, and it's single estate. So I think price wise, I think compared to blends, and because I have seen that blends are somehow cheaper than the single than the single origin. Maybe because in the because in the content of the blends, maybe some components of that blend, maybe that are using a cheap, maybe not cheaper, but coffee that doesn't cost as much as compared to the other components. So let's say for example, if a roaster is using a single or is creating a blend and they are using a bean that comes from Brazil and it's costing a bit more because of the trade prices, and they only use about, let's say, 30% of that in that blend. And then they use another bean, so let's say maybe coming from another farm in Brazil, but it costs cheaper. Um, or maybe in a, or maybe in another country, like maybe I don't know, maybe Africa. So maybe if it costs slightly cheaper, so like no offense to the African, um, so no offense to the African farms, if the if the coffee is cheaper there. Um, so yeah, so if it's cheaper and they use 70% of that blend, then probably the price of that would probably drop accordingly to like how much was spent. So maybe they use less of the expensive coffee compared to the slightly cheaper. So I think that might be one of the reasons why blends might be a bit cheaper um
Yeah,
compared
like
to single origins.
yeah, somehow I feel like, oh, like I don't want to like think that way. Like I want to feel like, oh, the roaster is, or the, you know, coffee manufacturer, whatever, the roaster is blending it because they want a certain flavor and they want you to experience a certain flavor. Whereas sometimes, you know, I can't help but thinking that, oh, the blend is cheaper because, you know, they use like you said in your example, like, oh, 30% Brazilian bean, or whatever bean from, you know, Guatemala or whatever, and it's like a nicer grade. Oh, this is like a nicer harvest, like species of a bean, and then they fill in the rest with whatever random stuff they have, right? Like, and it turns out to be a flavor that, you know, it's good enough, but it's like, you know, it's like I can't help but thinking like it's like filler almost, and that's why it may be cheaper. Like all the beans that, you know, they don't want as single origin, you know, they dumped into the blended beans. But I mean, I don't know enough to say that, but about coffee farms and coffee roasting. But I just that's crossed my mind, you know, like, you know, what are your thoughts about that?
Um, yeah, well, I think most roasters would want to get the most out of each bean, and they would want to go further with that when they create their own blends. So if they really want to magnify So if they really want to magnify like a flavor profile with mixing with another flavor profile, then I I think only the good roasters wouldn't really want to use filler coffees. So I know some good roasters, they may even splash in a bit of Robusta beans just to add some of that, just to add some of the properties of a Robusta bean, just to make it more, just to maybe add some uniqueness to it. Um, yeah, so I think only the good roasters only try to only try to only try to bring out the best of the multiple coffees that are being used in the blend. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think it's only the good ones that try to avoid using fillers.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, yeah, it's more about blending so that this is the flavor that you want your coffee to taste like. And in terms of like freshness and uh, longevity, like do you find that because through the processing of coffee, do you find that single origin tends to have better properties of it stays fresher longer, it lasts longer, like it's I mean, in the recent years, like some people have even has gone as far as looking at toxin and molds in coffee bean that has been you know processed a certain way, that it's actually leaving toxin and mold on the coffee bean. But do you find that single origins tend to yield like better freshness and a better bean together?
That is actually a good question because if you mix in two single origins, then that creates a blend. So I think in terms of freshness and how long it is able to last, I think from my own view at the moment, I think it would last just as the same as if it was just only a single origin by itself.
Right. Yeah.
So I
Really
don't
no
think,
difference there.
so I don't think there would be much of a difference. Maybe if and because maybe all beans are different. So maybe if one single origin, so maybe depending on the bean property, if that so let's say if single origin A lasts lasts a lot longer than single origin B, then I think that would probably maybe increase a bit of how long it would be able to last.
Right.
So I think it's just so I think from my view, I think it's just a so I think it's just a really I think it's just a minute thing which could potentially affect. So I think it comes down to the to the beans used for the blend.
Yeah. And it sounds like it really comes down to, like you said before, like if your preference and type of complexity and flavor is
Is
dependent on, like if you're looking for more of a natural a flavor and you're trying to isolate and really delve into the flavor profiles of that origin of bean versus a blend where it's more of a flavor that the roaster may have put together, and you know this is the coffee that they want that want you to taste, right?
Yep, I think that is very spot on. So I think it's like if I want to taste coffee in isolation, so I just want to really focus on this being from coming this um from this from this country or farm, then then I would really want to go then I would just want to just have it as a single estate. But otherwise, if I'm going for the flavors, um so if I want to match to my own flavor for preferences, then maybe a blend. Um
Right.
so I've seen blends which are called like so there is a blend from there is a blend there is a blend like from a UK roaster which is called the fudge blend, and I've tried it, and basically as the name states, it has a really it has a really fudge, like a chocolate fudge taste, and the roaster does occasionally change the content just so that it can maintain that fudge taste.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
so I think it just comes down to the roaster if they want to promote, like, so let's say if they want to have a fudge taste, if they want to have a sweet shop taste, and I believe it or not, there is a blend called the Sweet Shop from a UK roaster, but I haven't tried that. But I've tried the fudge blend, and yeah, fudgy tastes coming from different single origins.
As advertised.
Well, just not to advertise, I won't name. Well, yeah, so it's coming from a UK roast anyway.
So right now, off the top of your head, what is your most memorable and favorite single origin bean that you've had?
Oh, this is an interesting one, but I think I would mention. I think I'll mention one. So this is a bean from Brazil, and it's called the Brazil Fazenda Cachoeira da Grama. Um, so this is one of my memorable. This is actually one of my favorite single origin beans, and it comes around around the December time, around this time of the year. So I really like it because like it really brings out the chocolate notes. It's really milk chocolate, and it just really and it really and it yeah and it and it really fills my plate. So I really do like it's memorable because I really like the milk chocolate taste. I really like the nutty taste, whether as an espresso, latte, milk drink, flat white. It it always just makes me happy. It makes me smile. Like I just really enjoy it because it just seems like the kind of espresso that I would always want to continue that I would want to enjoy.
Cool.
So that's one of them. So that's one of my memorable. So that's one of my favorite one of my favorite single origins.
Neat. What
Uh,
about well, blends I won't ask you because there's so many different blends and we could talk about that for hours.
yeah. So how what about you? Have you got like a memorable blend? Same thing, not blend, but maybe single origin. Being
Yeah,
that
I've tried two single origin beans uh and I don't have the single origin bean as often because of it's a little more expensive, and I want to be able to try as many different types of coffee beans as possible. So I haven't had too many single origins. But the two I've had are the first one is from it's the bean is from Thailand, and I don't know if you've heard of the coffee roaster. It's called Doi Chang, spelled Doi Chaang, and the actual the bean is from Thailand, and it's single estate, single origin, grown at an altitude about I think I can't remember how many feet, like 4,800 feet or something like that, and it's all like fair trade and direct trade with the coffee roaster. It's called Deutschang, but then the coffee roaster actually is based in Vancouver, um, and it was a very light roast, and I really enjoyed it. It was very citrusy, and very it had like a very slight note of like cranberry actually. A little, it's kind of like this tart kick after. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like cranberry. When you have cranberry, it's like cranberry juice, right? It's tart. Or when you have like a lemon tart, it's tart. So um, you really get that like a citrusy bright and then kind of like a tart kick at the end. So I the flavor I don't really prefer. Like I really like the full body type of flavors as well. But in terms of that single origin, it was memorable because it had this little like kick at the end with tartness, and I found that very unique. And that was the first single origin bean that I purchased and tried out. However, the second coffee bean I had that was single origin is from this. Well, he's not a roaster. I guess he's kind of like a. They call him a life hacker. I don't know if you heard of this guy called Dave Asprey. He actually he's American, but he lives on Vancouver Island over here where I live in British Columbia, and he's very into like health and organics and eating like grass fed like beef and that kind of stuff. Like he's really into that health, right? And he loves coffee as well, and he created his own roast and his own brand of coffee, and it's called Bulletproof. I don't know if you've heard of that. Have you heard of Bulletproof coffee?
Oh, the bulletproof and like where there's and like where they like where you drink coffee, where you have the coffee and you
Butter.
add some, yeah, 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 when you add some butter at the top, and like apparently it's good for your mind.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the guy, right? So Bulletproof Executive is his company, but like his coffees like branded Bulletproof. But Bulletproof coffee, when the actual drink is where they brew with this bean and a single origin. It's a wet process, and it's supposed to be um, like there's supposed to be like minimal like less molds and toxins in the bean because when you through the processing, the wet processing, it's the way they process it doesn't leave um, moisture, and moisture is where it creates the mold, right? So when the bean is packaged before it's even roasted, it has apparently it has molds. But I mean, I'm not going to talk about Bulletproof for that, but basically the drink is you use this bean and you put some grass-fed butter into your coffee, which to a lot of people sounds really weird. And you can put what they call a medium chain triglyceride oil. It's basically like oil. It's fat, right? And but it's MCT, so it's like it's fat that your body is able to process and digest quick. So it's very quick usable energy. But that's what the bulletproof drink is. But we're not going to talk about that. The bean itself, it's single origin and whatnot, and I've had it with grass-fed butter as well. I've tried it actually. It's very. It actually tastes pretty good. A lot of nutmeg and a lot of nuttiness from. Excuse me. A lot of nuttiness and a lot of nutmeg flavor from the bulletproof coffee, but I've also tried it like with just through my Aeropress and straight up, and it's very I liked it. It was like a medium roast, and it was smooth. Like it was really smooth. I don't know if it was something I did with different with my Aeropress, but I bought a 1 pound bag, and it was pretty expensive, and I like every cup I had was just so smooth, and I didn't like I don't know if I found a sweet spot for that bean and the grind and the way I was my recipe for through the Aeropress, but it was really smooth, and it wasn't like a bitter, strong, like kick you in the face type of coffee flavor. It was just smooth. You taste like a little bit of honey, and it was very nutty, and that was like the single origin bean that I so far that I've had that I really liked. I would just wish I could buy more of it, but it's like it's about 20. I think it's gone up in price now. It's about 24 $25 for a not even a pound. Like I think for like about I think it's a 12-ounce bag, like for about $25 Canadian, right? So
Ooh,
to me, that's a little expensive, but I really enjoyed it, and I wish I had more of it. So
well, well, sounds like you really had a memorable and like you really had like a really memorable um like a taste journey um um with with the single origin of the bulletproof coffee.
I did, and I think the biggest thing that stood out for me was that it was smooth, and I would give credit to maybe my brew recipe. And maybe it wasn't all the bean that was making it smooth, but I mean, maybe I just hit the sweet spot for it, and it was just like really good. Like like couldn't wait till the next morning because I try to have like one every morning, right? And I would like, oh, maybe I should make another one. It's so good. And like, oh, I couldn't wait till the next morning to wake up like, on time, like I like to sleep in, but with that coffee, I'm like, oh, just thinking about it, I'm like, oh, it's delicious. So yeah, like get up on time or get up like earlier when I just, just to brew this coffee and brew it the same way, the same recipe that I had that, I found, accidentally, I guess, and it was just the smoothness that I think really made it something that I really liked.
Well, sounds good. And like, yeah, I think single or origin. I think by itself, you could really learn something about it. You could like, if it really if it really grabs your taste buds, then I think you would always enjoy it. So just like how I would like my Brazilian cachoeira bean, single origin bean. So yeah, so it comes around every year. Um, Yeah, had it last year and I'm still awaiting to have it this year. So once when I finish my current supplies, and then I might go for it.
Yeah. Do you normally stock like with this particular bean because it's one of your favorites and you like it so much and only comes around once a year? Do you normally stock up on it? Like you'll buy like I don't know like a
I
5 kilo bag? I don't know.
actually like the roaster has it every year. So he has it almost like in the December time and then he runs out by I think March or April or even into May.
Wow.
So so the roaster does have quite a lot of it and then I usually sort of like to take my time. So I don't really buy in big batches, but before I used to buy the green beans of it, and then I would just roast it myself, just so that I could reserve the green beans, and so that I could roast it at my leisure.
Okay.
So
So
that's
so
so that
this
is why
roaster sells the bean, like the green beans, and also like his
the
roast
roast.
as well.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'm not sure if you've heard. This roaster is called Has Been. Um. So Yeah, so the owner is really passionate about coffee himself, and he actually goes to visit the farms. He visits the owners of the farms, builds a builds a good relationship, a good rapport with them. Um, so yeah, so like yeah, so he stocks this coffee pretty much every year, and it's one of the staple coffees. So yeah, so I really like it, and so he offers it as a green bean as well as roasted. So sometimes I like to buy roasted and the green bean. So when I roast it, I could roast it to the same level.
Wow. So you're literally trying to not
So
imitate, but you're trying to recreate uh his roast or this roaster's roast, right?
yeah, so that is what I did try. Yeah, so that is what I have tried in the past. So yeah, but I think this time I might just buy it roasted since I might just want to just plainly just enjoy it this time rather enjoy roast it and then enjoy it. So I might just enjoy it straight this time.
Yeah. Has there been a roaster that has given you single origin beans that you felt has been very talented? Like they'll use the same bean, the single origin, however they'll roast it like different ways. Like, oh, this is the dark roast, this is the lighter roast, this is a medium roast, and like you've just been like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. Like, have you had that experience before?
I, I think it's usually like from what I've observed in UK, usually the roasters they dictate. Usually they'll dictate what roast levels they'll use. So they don't really give you much of the option, but they still tell you, but they'll but they'll but if this other green bean, they'll still recommend what is the roast level that you should roast this bean to. Um, yeah, so they don't usually give you the option of what roast level you want. Um, but saying that, I have seen roasters where they say that they have especially roasted this bean lighter because I feel that it brings out more of the taste. So I
Right.
think it was one of the Ethiopian beans that I tried before, and like it was roasted quite light. Um, yeah, so yeah, so so I think the bottom line is I think most roasters usually just roast to to how they feel would bring out the most of the bean.
Yeah, and I think it should be done that way, like regardless of like whether it's single origin or your blend. Is that you, of course, everyone has different tastes, but I think like when you purchase a bag of beans that have already been roasted, it's like you want to be able to experience what the roaster wants you to experience. And for me, that's I like that mystery, like, oh, like I'll like there's so many different coffees out there. Like I'll buy a different brand and a different blend and a different bean every single time I buy a bag, right? Like I don't think I've ever bought like two of the same bags so far. Mind you, like my coffee journey hasn't been as long as yours, but I've gone through maybe 20 something bags of coffee, like on my own, for brewing at home, and I've never purchased like the same bag of coffee twice. Like I've always wanted to try something new, and I think it's because I like the fact that roasters will take the time, and they'll take the care to roast the bean to what they think is the best of this bean and best for people who are drinking this coffee.
Um, yeah, I think um, I think most roast I think I think most I think I think at most like I think when you did say that you wouldn't I think when you said like you wouldn't really want to buy two bags of the same coffee at the same time, like that I do agree because because coffee like what I said in our last talk, like coffee is a very big world. There are a lot of coffees out there that we would still want to try. So unless if you really, really, really do like this bean, um, so unless if you really, really unless if you really, really do like this bean, then some people may buy two bags, but otherwise some people may want to buy one bag or even a whole kilo just to like it.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that for espresso, like if in order for you like really dial in the bean and really get the maximum potential from that bean, it's like you probably have to go through quite a bit of it,
Yeah,
just
and I
just
just
to find out, right?
yeah,
Yeah, for
of
sure.
course, yeah, definitely.
Well, that's awesome. Do you have any other comments about single origin versus blended beans?
Um, I think single origin beans are, I think they are more simpler compared to blends. Blends are more complex. So I think, yes, I think that would be my last comment. on.
Yeah.
So I think that will be my last comment of my last comment on this topic.
Yeah. So that's great. I don't have any further comments about that. So thank you for you know chatting with me today.
Well, thank
For
you.
anyone who out there who has any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you like our coffee talks, don't be afraid. We will come back with more topics, and let's try to make this like a weekly thing. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, sounds great. I'll be happy to talk about yeah, I'll be happy to talk about coffee with you every week. So let's do it every week.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. We hope you got some value and enjoyed our coffee talk, our second coffee talk. So yeah, tune back in again soon, and thank you again for watching. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Ryan.